After interviewing over 50 guests for my own podcast in 3 years, I've learned a thing or two about how to actually set your guests up for success and make them feel comfortable. At the end of the day, this is your responsibility, and it's up to you to make sure that the end result is an episode that you and your guests are excited to share and are proud of. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to make your guests comfortable for your upcoming podcast interview. Before my guest comes on my show, I always get them to fill out a little pre-form and I give them the sample questions ahead of time. This is a bit controversial. I've talked to a lot of other podcasters and a lot of people don't like to send their guests questions for various reasons. For me, if I'm being honest, the best answer I have to a question isn't something I'm just like coming up with on the spot. If I'm really given an opportunity to think through what I want to say, I can have a much more engaging story or valuable takeaways if I've had that time to think it through. And I believe my guests feel the same. So I send them a form with some example questions and I get them to just bullet point how they'd answer it. It also allows me to weed out questions that they don't have that good of an answer for and really ask them things that are going to be very interesting and things that they can really talk to authentically. So I send them that form ahead of time. Something I stole from Tim Ferriss, who I love as a podcast host, is get your guests to answer what's their favorite story to tell. When you're making kind of like the small talk at the beginning before you're recording, ask them if there's a particular story that they tell that's related to the topic today that always gets a great response. Either everyone laughs or gets very emotional or it's a very empathetic style story that people can relate to, that they've told a number of times that is really relevant to today's topic, and then tee up that story at the beginning of the interview. This makes them feel they've already had a win, they've told a story they've told a million times, that they know they did well, and they're just more comfortable. They already feel like the interview's going well. So ask them that at the beginning. Even if you don't end up using the story in the actual episode, it's going to make them feel really good and confident in the early stages of the interview. You definitely want to send your guest a calendar invite with the time and location. It seems obvious, but a lot of people will just email me, hey, here's the time and date, and expect me to actually prioritize this and make sure I don't double book. So send them a calendar invite and give them the location of where the interview will take place, especially if it's going to be a remote interview. Make that link super easy. They can click on it the day of and let them know if there's anything they need to download. Do they need to download Zoom? Do they need to be on Chrome in order to actually access the recording tool? Anything to get ahead of them on the day of that minute, kind of panicking because they had some unexpected things to do. Tell them to take the interview in a quiet room with as little distractions as possible. If they have an external mic, epic. If not, not everybody does. Tell them to just use headphones with a built-in mic. That works really well as well. Give them some tech prep. You want to make sure that you're going to have a high quality audio recording. Again, if it's going to be a remote interview, tell them things like, take this interview in a quiet space, as small as room as possible. Don't sit right in front of a busy window with a lot of noise coming outside. Just try to find a quiet room in your space where it'll be distraction free. If they have an external microphone, epic. Not everybody does. In fact, most people don't. So let them know that headphones with a built-in microphone work really well. You don't want them to be using the built-in speaker on their laptop. That can have a lot of echo. So definitely headphones with a built-in mic. When the actual interview arises and they show up, whether it's in person or remote, we want to also make them super comfortable. Let them know you're not recording right away. It's so funny how many people join a remote interview with me and right away they're like, hello, Sam. Yes, I'm doing great. And I'm like, okay, we're not recording yet. Just going to chat for a second, make sure that you're comfortable with all the questions, and I'll let you know what to expect. I even do like a countdown. Okay, we're recording in 3, 2, 1. Just make them feel super comfortable about that process. Another pro tip is if you're going to do a lot of editing in the back end, for example, I take out filler words like, if they want to redo a question, I'm going to edit all those awkward pauses or give them an opportunity to redo it. So if you have that flexibility in the editing, tell them, let them know that they can take a second to think about it, or if they want to repeat an answer, they can do that too. Another note on recording and tech is you can give them some best practices to, again, make sure it's a high quality audio recording. It can be very distracting if the guest is banging the table, if they're a hand talker and are hitting their mic like I just did. That can get really distracting for the listener. So let the guest know to be a bit mindful of that. And if you notice they're doing it in the interview, even if it's awkward and it takes you out of flow, pause and check them on it so that they can bring attention to it and course correct throughout the interview. Another thing would be swiveled chairs that can be really noisy, or moving your feet on the ground. Just anything that's going to create unnecessary distracting noises, nip it in the bud and bring this to your guest's attention. They don't interview all the time. They don't know how loud these noises can be and how distracting they'll be for the end listener. Tell your guest you want to keep the flow of the conversation conversational. You've all had that podcast guest where you ask them a question and they go on a 10-minute rant and monologue and just tell you everything they know about that topic. That's not an engaging interview to listen to. You want there to be a lot of back and forth. So tell your guest that you're going to ask them a question, but don't feel like they need to tell you everything about it. Give you an opportunity to pry and ask them to elaborate. Let them know you want to go back and forth, and that if you interrupt them in the interview, it's just in an effort to keep it conversational because that is super engaging. So set the tone that you might interrupt them, not to take offense. This is very common, but you want to keep the flow of the interview conversational. Now, reminder for you as the host, it is your job that the interview ends on time. Be respectful of your guest's time. If you have 45 minutes on their calendar, make sure you're watching the time during the interview. Even if you're not getting through all the questions, that's too bad. Wrap it up. You want to end on time. It's also your job to make sure that you get valuable insights from your guests, that when you're marketing this episode later, there's interesting things that you can tease about the episode that would hook a listener in and would want to listen to it. These are your responsibilities. I would say a big pro tip is prepare, but not too much. It's very tempting to want to ask the guests questions they've never been asked before. So you listen to all their other interviews, but what can happen is you can assume the listener knows as much as you do, and you can skip foundational topics. So prepare, but not too much. Good luck. There you have it, how to make your guest comfortable for their upcoming podcast interview with you. If you want to learn more pro tips about launching, marketing, or monetizing a podcast, please visit launchapodcastonabudget.com, where you're going to access my step-by-step process for podcast success that has now been trusted by hundreds of aspiring podcasters. Hope to see you there.